Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome back to the channel. I am the Southern Fried Film Nerd, and today we're going to be talking about a little film called Final Destination 2. Now, if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I have my shtick. I've got my pros list, I've got my meh list, and I have my cons list. So, let's go ahead and knock those pros out of the park, shall we? Pro number one, the opening narration over the credits. Why do I like it? Well, it's very efficient. It serves as a recap of the first film. It establishes the premise of the film and, some of the rules that we're going to have to follow throughout the film. Plus, getting some glimpses of Kimberly's life through photos and things in her room, kind of like pre-game's character development for her. I just feel like it's a very efficient use of the film's runtime. Pro number two, the characters in the film feel much more honest in their reactions to the trauma they've experienced. And unlike the first film, I feel like these characters behave in such a way that makes sense for the situation they found themselves in, right? So, there's the mortuary scene. God, why is that word the mortuary scene in the first film? That if you watched my review of the first film, you know that I didn't really like it. And part of the reason I didn't like it is because the characters didn't really react or show emotion the way that I felt that they should have in the film. So this movie also has a mortuary scene. And the characters actually react to the dead body in the room this time, which is essentially a stranger to them. Whereas in the first film, Alex couldn't even be bothered to show the slightest bit of emotion for his dead best friend. So yeah, I just feel like the characters are more honest in the second one. Pro number three. I really like how Death feels less like a slasher villain and more like a force of nature in this one. Albeit a very mean-spirited force of nature, but in the first movie you actually get glimpses of Death moving around the characters and influencing things in the environment. It feels more like a tangible threat than in this movie where Death just kind of feels like it's just in the air around the characters, waiting to collect its victims. And yeah, there are moments in this film where, Death directly affects parts of the environment, and makes things do things that they wouldn't do, or behave as such in actual reality. But it's a lot less prevalent in this one. Pro number four, Death's plan. In this movie, it just makes a lot of sense to me, because Death's plan essentially just got royally fucked up in the first movie. And now it's got to backtrack and clean up all these people who should have never been alive in the first place. The scene where all the characters realize how they are connected to the victims of the first film, and come to understand why they are in the situation that they're in now, I feel like it's just wonderful writing, in my opinion. Someone said, let's make a sequel to Final Destination, and someone said, how do we do that? And then somewhere along the lines, someone said, hold my beer, I have a fantastic idea. And it really feels like an organic kind of growth for the mythos, the lore of the Final Destination franchise. Pro number five. All right. This movie has a lot more fun with its premise, right? From premonitions that make people think pigeons are going to kill someone, to an awkward man with a box of prosthetic arms who likes to smell women's hair. I don't know. It's just a lot of weird things in here. It's a very quirky kind of movie, and it has this dark, kind of off-the-wall sense of humor. And I feel like that was a thing that was missing from the first film, which, after watching this one, post-watching the first one, I feel like the first one was, way more somber. And I didn't get to really mention that in the review for it because I hadn't watched this one again yet, so I wasn't really thinking about it. But yeah, the writers on this one, they just threw everything at the wall. They were like, well, throw it in there. Why not? And pro number six. The entire third act of this film fucks. All right? It fucks so hard. From the very moment they crash, we get this masterclass in setup and payoff that leads to an action set piece that feels appropriate for this film, unlike the third act. In the first film, we get car crashes, explosions, flying barbed wire. Hell, I'm surprised a kitchen sink didn't fly through somebody's head. Have they done that in a movie yet? I don't think they've done that in a movie yet. If you do, just go ahead and send me a check. I'll take the check. I need the check. Please, send me the check. Oh, my Windows update. Let me just go ahead and close that because that's getting in the way. All right. So that's going to do it for my pros for the Final Destination 2. So let's go ahead and move on into the meh list. So, meh number 1 for me is going to be like the overall pacing of the film. So this one confuses me because like without the FBI agents, without so much time spent on the aftermath of events, without spending time on a romance subplot that never really feels realized, the movie is way more economic with its runtime. However, for a movie that doesn't have the time for all the like character development and processing of trauma, it sure does find the time to constantly recap the first film, right? So I thought the opening narration over the credits was perfection, in my opinion. Like that was enough. You didn't need to do anything more. But then, like, we have Eugene in the police station who basically recounts the entire story of Flight 180. And then Kimberly and police officer dude both independently do their own, like, research into what happened to the victims from the first film. And it's like, it's 3 separate recaps that weren't particularly needed. And I feel like they could have used that time to flesh out these characters a little bit more. Because, minor spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that here in a second. Only 1 or 2 of them really stand out, and one of them is just downright pitiful. Now, I know that this movie is directly related to the first movie, like building upon the events from the first movie, and ties directly into it, but 3 recaps? 3? That was way too much. We didn't need 3 recaps. But at the same time, we have our first death sequence coming in around the 20-minute mark in this film. Whereas in the first film, I believe it was somewhere around the 40-minute mark before we got our first death sequence. We also have a lot more death sequences in this film as well. So there's that. That lands the pacing in the meh section. It's improved, but there's still a lot of time that they just waste on things they didn't really need to. All right. Now, to my little spoiler alert that I mentioned a second ago, meh, number 2. Number 2, the cast. Okay, so some of my favorite characters in the series are in this film, with Eugene and Rory standing out as just pure entertainment value. Eugene has some of the best lines in a movie ever. That's a bunch of bullshit, right? Eugene, great character. And then Rory is this degenerate slacker you just love to roll your eyes out. The scene where he's asking Kimberly to, go to his house and delete his hard drive and all that stuff so his mom's not disappointed in him. It's just comic gold. And he does stuff like that all through the movie. And then there's Kat, who I love, but if I'm being honest, I think I love Kat in this movie and loved Kat in the initial viewing way back in the day. Because of the major crush I had on Keegan Connor Tracy back in the day. In the movie, though, her character is pretty one-note. Her jokes don't land quite as well as Eugene's and Rory's, and most of the time they just kind of feel mean. Not dark humor mean, but just mean. So that pretty much does it for the 3, good characters in the movie for me. After that, we have Tim and Nora, who, they're serviceable. They do what they're supposed to do, but nothing really stands out about them. And then we end with Kimberly and a police guy. Kimberly is fine, I guess. It kind of feels like she sleeps her way through most of the movie. She kind of always has this, dreamy look in her eyes, like she's, just woke up from a nap before someone called action. So it kind of takes me out of any, really dramatic scene that she has to be in. And then there's Police Guy. I'm sure you've realized at this point, I refer to him as Police Guy. I don't even know his name. there's absolutely nothing memorable about this character. It could have been anybody, like John Police Dude. I don't know. And that's really kind of disappointing, especially when you take into account the issues with the pacing that I mentioned. They probably could have used some of that time to, I don't know, make him something. I don't know, anything. And that brings us to number 3, which is unfortunately once again going to be the deaths. Now, there are some real bangers in this movie. It does the sequel thing where it goes bigger and badder than the first. And I like how most of them play out like little murder mysteries where the audience gets to try to figure out exactly what's going to happen. But the final blow is almost always unpredictable. And I know like every single kill is telegraphed. Like the eye on the refrigerator when Evan dies and, you know, stuff like that. But like in the actual setup for it, the actual final blow never really has anything to do with the setup leading up to it. So it's just kind of like, feels a little shallow to me. And like there's like a little too much going on in the setups, right? Like, Evan's death in particular is super drawn out, and thankfully they didn't do that with every death, but like, it's one of those things, anything could have killed him, anything. And now, don't get me wrong, there is some like gory goodness here for the gore hounds. Back in the day, this was the movie that introduced me to gore in a mainstream movie. Now, I'd seen classics like Evil Dead and stuff like that, but this is the first time I had ever seen gore on this level on a theater screen, like in a mainstream film release. And like, now today, I'll admit, it is pretty tame when compared to things that have come out since. It's pretty tame to things that have come out in other movies in this franchise. But at the time, it really like grabbed me. Now, my little horror baddies, it's time for the cons. Ding. Now, if you watched my review for the first film, you'll be pleased to know that the cons list is so much smaller this go around. Alright, so let's get into it. Con number 1. The movie makes some strange decisions. Like, in the final act, it's trying to convince the audience that some nurse is just randomly going to try to choke someone to death for no apparent reason, has no connection to the characters whatsoever, and like it plays this as like a serious plot beat. And then there's like this little like last minute love story hint they throw in between Kimberly and Police Guy, which is, if I said that Alex and Clear didn't feel fully realized in the first film, this is just like, this is a fart in the wind, ladies and gentlemen. It is nothing. Like for one thing, Police Guy has zero chemistry with Kimberly, and Kimberly has zero chemistry with him. Like I said, she sleeps through the role, and he's just like the most average to ever average. So it feels like they just wanted to throw that in at the end to try to like milk some emotional connection out of the events at the end, and it just doesn't work. Con number 2. It is basically what the entire end of the film is built on. The notion that the only way to beat death is new life. New life can defeat death. So, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, Kimberly does a self-exit so that she can be brought back, thus disrupting Death's plan. However, if you pay attention at the end of the first film, the FBI agent who checks Alex's pulse states that he's not breathing. So that means someone had to resuscitate him because he's in the last scene of the movie. He didn't die there. And so it's the same ending. So why did it work for Kimberly but not for Alex? And now, to my knowledge, Kimberly and Police Guy are the only characters in the series who haven't died, which I can now confirm. I wrote this script before watching Bloodlines. I have now watched Bloodlines. Bloodlines confirms that Kimberly did survive. So, yeah. So it did work for her, but it didn't work for Alex. All right. So what the fuck? All right. And my last con. Sadly, on a rewatch, it is painfully obvious to me that this one kind of lives in the shadow of the first film a bit too much. At times it feels like it could be a remake. It basically has the same opening credit sequence. It has the prerequisite mortuary scene. God bless you, Tony Todd. Rest in peace, my friend. It doesn't really stray far from the rules and the formula the first movie established. Like, it tightens it up a bit, but it doesn't really do all that much different. Sometimes taking shots wholesale from the first movie. There's even a scene where like water stalks a character across the floor, which was directly, like, they could have just used the same frame from the first movie. And the main problem with this is that the film drops all the subtlety and foreboding that the original had for like a more economic approach, but then it fills out that runtime that in the first film was utilized for like character development and such. Like, it fills it out just recapping the first film multiple times. I'm not going to get off that horse. Like, that's probably my primary complaint about this film, is how much it recaps that first film. Alright, well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the end of this video. If you like what you've seen, if you like what you've heard, I intend to punch a button, Whew, I butchered that one. I'm going to leave it in because I think it's funny. Anyway, I intend to post a bunch more content just like this and much more moving forward. I'm going to do the entire Final Destination series. So feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell. And until we see each other again, please remember, always go forth and be good humans.